明天讲那个报信了。
class on the Uttaratantra Shastra. No class on Wednesday.
大后天，也就是说星期三、星期四、
Thursday,
星期四和五六
Friday, and Saturday
入大
we'll
乘
have the class on entering the way of the great vehicle.
后天也没有。
So no class on Wednesday.
这个纪念吧，就是说这个课啊，就有点短。
Our class this year is less regular than how we used to have.
这边也有一些
But there are various things happening. Also, I have to attend certain meetings. That's really important. And I have to attend certain things that I have to take care of, especially when it comes to constructions. Also, my health. There are people who complained that I do not comply to all the previous arrangement of the schedule, but I think I'm still better than Zongsan Kinter Rinpoche, whom would ask the students to stay and wait for him, but he would come back after a whole night. And the students would ask him, saying that, why don't you tell us so that we don't have to wait for you for this long period of time? And he would be smiling and laughing. But I myself, in fact, I can't give teachings because I have lots of things to take care of. That is why I had to cancel a few of the classes. So I will teach tomorrow and no class on Wednesday. Hopefully, I will give the classes on the entering the way of the great vehicle on Thursday and Fridays. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in billions of eons. I now see it here, receive it, and uphold it. I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning to liberate all beings as generally.
대신 캡덕은 바속당 자리용주와 말리 라 상디역 송그 겸자때 스카르던 남라 추르톤도 저터하낭 라르남기 르가자르가 레레 숑 대진 직된 터비추 송와 르가 레레 숑 바드니 리당 셈저브 자티 저터 집주터 대진 바속 당저브 추데 지와 저브르시다 Chirtar Hai Chongnar Ngajar Ti Shong Manjik Vishanba No Nyomo Yertun Jikse Lamanach Pongir Tsibmu Servar Tar Devjin Jikten Tagna Sanctan Zigmet Lasuk Lasuk Gip Shong Va Semchin Nyomo Dungur Ramjum Jivab Lana Lamid Lamtsir Tun Lamtsir Jota Gangshir 강시르 티근 바니 땅 판데 춤치 흑섬단 바 대시르 타원 라르제기 양년 남레 캬브람 파가 라르너가이 자침보 사르니 남길 अर्नरमन 상디르 nga장 코르와 예 사군 직된 딱던로 라르너 하이 서년 시와마 도드메 므엄브른 페르이 돈도 조고 특제다그니르 남기 양식장 등으로 멤버 지비 돈던 지 라르는 지상 이공 서년 제 셈기르고반 페르른 기르이 저 특제다그니 대진 흑석벽송 땅진 생옥도 삼바 그르시 니다 도르나 말인 직된 감스 양 사당 사네 대위 직강 인 사당 사네 대위 직강 인 Tēnā mālī njikten kyab nāwa gāyāngnya lāna rāptab tēmbara jōta jirtar nāwa tāmchārbi chāmu jāna mamnyōwa tāmchil hāi rānāvara yāng rānālam tōna mandrō zhīn Nalum Tona Mandrova, Devin Chumcham Chodon, Jimu Yishi, Shoyer Yang, Numo Mip Gaziki, Navi Lamdan, Gerva Yen, Cherter Yarki, Tina, Chen, Loto, Pumso, Pusum Sober, Chi Pombo, Badmit Bar, Salar, Gindam Bepar Tar, Devin the Ginda Sala, Gindam Bepar Tar, Devin Tirjip, Chenle, Geri, Tamshu. Chi char drovi gevi lotor ger number topa meper bep chertern jikten gevi lamjignar lungki charchir chingi bebartar devjin tsir long drogi mon pervshir sangi chinle tamchu chuchirim bep khchallam kendang sechin gerwa dang mungir moku namki khirne ba dangzin zong che chimeder nyangbo chan Tawang Chen Gibi Lotorgyo.
To liberate all beings, let's generate the supreme bodhicitta. Feel a bit drowsy before the actual class. So now let's get into Uttaratantra Shastra. There are 5 chapters, and we've already covered 3 chapters previously. We're currently on the 4th. We're currently on the chapter 4, where it is talking about the activity of the Buddha. And in this chapter, we are looking at the 9 different examples that further demonstrates the Buddha's activity. The first one was on the Indra and the Indra's palace. Now we're looking at the second example, where we're going to use the example of the celestial drum to further expound on the specific qualities of the Buddha's activity that is devoid of elaborations and any deliberate effort and so on. So these examples, it would be the best for you to look very closely at the outlines of each of the examples. It is because whenever you look at the outlines in the commentary, it would be beneficial to you. Also, if you have the opportunities to look into the different, for example, other commentaries or other teachings on this topic or on this text, it will be beneficial to you as well. Now let's look at the second example, that is the celestial drum. So how could the celestial drum then further expound on or demonstrate the Buddha's teaching? Both the celestial drum and the Buddha give teachings. But over here it talks about how the Buddha's teaching and the Buddha's speech is more supreme than that of the celestial drum. Now let's look at the outline, where it says that how first of all, the celestial drum also expound the Dharma, and how the Buddha's teaching of the Dharma is more superior than the former, and then how we can enter into the teaching of how the sentient beings could enter into the Dharma teachings according to their different conditions. Now let's look at the first verse. The Buddha's activity. The Buddha's activities, in fact, is devoid of any deliberate effort. It is devoid of any differentiations and dualistic mind. It is of great spontaneity. I believe in the past, whenever we supplicate to the Buddha, we feel that we will supplicate to the Buddha, and then there is deliberate effort from the Buddha to bestow blessing. But after studying this text, you will understand that in fact the Buddha's blessings, the Buddha's teachings are devoid of any deliberate effort. They're of great spontaneity. So spontaneously, the Buddha will be able to liberate and be able to benefit the sentient beings. Let's look at the first verse. Over here it says that just like the celestial beings in the celestial realm, because of their previous karma, previous virtuous karma, such as the 10 virtuous deeds and all kinds of virtuous deeds that they've accumulated. And for those powers that's accumulated, they would be able to, without any deliberate effort, unlike how we would use all kinds of deliberate effort in order to receive certain result. The celestial drum doesn't have any of those deliberate effort of having the intention of expounding or have any of the place or location to expound any sound. There is no mental form. There is no form of the kaya of the body. There is no differentiation or dualistic mind. There is nothing like that in the celestial drum. According to the entering into the experience and insights of the Buddhas, the Adornment Sutra, it says that when the Buddha went into the celestial realm and turned the Dharma wheel to the celestial beings were very much indulged in the 5 sensory pleasures. However, in the background, there's the sound of the celestial drum. Usually, celestial beings can't perceive the celestial drum, but they can hear the sound of the celestial drum. And then the celestial drum would expound the sound on the teachings such as all compounded things are impermanent, everything that is compounded is suffering, all phenomena are devoid of an entity that is a self, and nirvana is peace. So after expounding on the Four Noble Truths, the celestial drum doesn't have any of those differentiations of the dualistic thoughts of wanting to expound the teaching so that the celestial beings would be able to be alleviated from their fears and any of the deliberate effort whatsoever. But such sound would spontaneously manifest because of the merit that's accumulated by the celestial beings. Whenever the celestial beings were to battle with the Asuras, the sound of the celestial drum would also resound in the background. Such kind of sound from the celestial drum is because of the accumulation of virtues. Over here it says that the celestial drum would then resound the teachings of the Four Noble Truths, the teachings on that all compounded things are impermanent, all compounded things are defiled and is suffering in nature, and all phenomena are devoid of a self as an entity, and the nirvana is peace. So such kind of teachings are expounded spontaneously by the celestial drum. all the essentials of the Dharma is expounded over there. And for these teachings on the Four Noble Truths, in fact, is the foundation and then the essence of all the teachings of the Dharma to all the followers of the Buddha, whichever school and sects that you belong to or you study in. I remember that when I was giving teaching in Thailand, there was one university where we give the teachings over there. And I remembered that the teaching of the Four Noble Truths was taught over there. So as Buddhist practitioners, we need to come to the firm and definitive understanding of the Four Noble Truths. We shouldn't just mimic. We shouldn't just voice it without genuine understanding. Rather, we should delve into the profundity of such Four Noble Truths. We have to understand each one of the Four Noble Truths to its most profundity to consider ourselves as a genuine practitioner. We have to practice upon them. This is really important. We have to walk the walk. It talks about how the Four Noble Truths are spontaneously expounded by the celestial drum, and then all the celestial beings whom dwell in the sensory pleasures, they would hear the sound from the celestial drum and then would no longer be distracted. The celestial beings, according to the Lotus Sutra, it says that the Buddha once told all the disciples not to get distracted, otherwise distraction could lead to the rebirth in lower realms, and at that time you would be full of regret, but you couldn't do anything about it anymore. So let's not get distracted, and we should all give up all kinds of the causes to distraction. The causes of distraction, such as the all of our little gadgets that we carry around, and or gossips. It would be the best for you to control yourself and bring right mindfulness to your speech. If you can't do that yourself, then I encourage all the Dharma teachers to encourage your students to bring right mindfulness to the speech and their actions. In the celestial realm, there are the celestial drums to remind the celestial beings not to get too distracted. However, in our world, in the human realm, it seems that not only we don't get advised, we don't receive any of the advice to eradicate those distractions. It seems that people are encouraged to get distracted. And then it says that through the through free from effort and so on, the Buddha's speech of the all-pervading ones permeates sentient beings without exception, teaching Dharma to those of karmic fortune. The Buddha's speech is devoid of any deliberate effort, devoid of any mental form, devoid of any location, and devoid of any differentiation of the dualistic thoughts. The celestial beings, for example, the celestial beings of the Trishrimshas heaven or of the other celestial realm, they would be able to hear certain celestial drum. However, it is different than that of the speech of the Buddha, because the Buddha would be giving the teaching of the Dharma at a certain place. But the Dharma that's taught would be pervasive overall. As long as the sentient beings made auspicious connection to the Buddha, then they would definitely be able to receive the teachings of the three yanas. So that's how the Buddha expounds the three yanas of the Dharma to the sentient beings with the appropriate dispositions and with connections to the Buddha as well. The Buddha expounds the Dharma, not making any differentiations. For example, saying that, oh, this person have great faith in me, therefore I should expound the teaching. It is not like that at all. The Buddha doesn't differentiate based on those. The way that the Buddha expounds the teaching is of great equanimity and all-pervasive. The way that the sentient beings receive the teachings are different because of their different dispositions and because of their various levels of auspicious connections that they've made. And now the next one says that the outline is that how it is derived from karma. It says that just as the sound of the drum arises among the gods from their own deeds, the Dharma spoken by the Muni arises in the world from beings' own deeds. The celestial drum would be able to expound the teachings of the Four Noble Truths. Who is making that sound? Is there someone or something that is deliberately making the sound of the Four Noble Truths? In fact, such kind of sound is expounded because of the various deeds of the sentient beings. Because of the collective karma of the celestial beings would be able to receive the teaching of the Four Noble Truths from the celestial drum. So the celestial drum is like a robot, or just like a king of the celestial realm. In fact, it is not like that there's a robot or a king that is expounding the teaching deliberately. It is not like that at all. It is all spontaneous. Such sound is spontaneous without anyone making a deliberate effort at all. Similarly, the sentient beings receiving the teachings from the Buddha is very much based on the faith and then the karmic deeds, the virtue that's accumulated from the sentient beings, so that they can hear the various teachings from the Buddha. For example, the sentient beings, after conducting certain deeds or planting certain seeds, then they would reap the fruition that is according to that kind of seeds. The sentient beings with virtuous deeds, seeds, or accumulations, they would be able to receive the virtuous fruition. The ones accumulated such virtue, once, for example, if they were to come to Larangar, then they would perceive that, oh, everything is full of joy and everything is full of great blessings. And the monastic group over here are the ones whom uphold pure precepts, and they practice with great diligence, and the whole environment looks just like Pure Land. That's how they would perceive it. And for sentient beings with the vice, with the lots of the vice accumulation of the karma, then they would perceive Larangar in a completely different way. They would see see everything as negative. And over here it says that the celestial beings receive the teachings from the Dharma drum, from the celestial drum, is because of their collective karma. But out of the collective karma, there are still specific karmas as well. Just as a group of people all enjoying this specific dish that is called spicy tofu, and then the rest of the sentient beings, the rest of the group, they all really enjoy this dish, except maybe one or two completely hated this dish and feel that the restaurant is terrible and it tastes horrible. So though that there are this group of people enjoying, the same group of people enjoying the common fruition, that is the dish, but the way that they perceive the taste of the dish would be different because of their individual specific karma. And then the next verse where it says that the sound of the drama, the sound of the drum accomplishes peace without effort or region, visible form or intention, unlike how the drum sets played in China mainland in lots of those monasteries. In fact, the monks would have to strike the gong, strike the bell, so that there is sound that would then resound from the bell. As it is stated that the celestial drum doesn't have any effort, and no one's striking it. There's no origin because there is no place for it to make such kind of resound, and then there's no visible form to it, and there's no mental form, no visible form, and there's no intention of giving such kind of Dharma teachings. It is of great spontaneity, without any deliberate effort at all, without any deliberate intention, without any differentiation of the dualistic thoughts and conceptualization. Similarly, the Dharma causes accomplishment of peace that is taught by the Buddha without deliberate effort or any other such features. The teaching of Dharma brings emancipation to sentient beings. Such kind of liberation as a fruition to the sentient beings is taught spontaneously. According to the condensed Shastra of Mahayana, it says that just as the Muni and as the celestial drum, they do not have any deliberate effort and do not have any deliberate concept to benefit. Rather, just like the Buddha would not have any differentiations, however, would accomplish all kinds of Dharma activities. Whenever we engage in studies and contemplation of the Dharma and the practice of the Dharma, whenever we supplicate to the three jewels, to the Buddha, we would feel this sense of peace. However, this kind of peace is generated or is arisen in our mind. It's not because the Buddhas, the three jewels, or the teacher deliberately bestow certain blessings upon you. Rather, it is spontaneous. So, in order to receive such kind of blessings, we have to accumulate more virtuous deeds. We have to accumulate more of such kind of propensity of virtue throughout samsara, that is beginningless and endless. If we do not habituate ourselves with the propensity of virtue, rather planting the vase, then the vase seeds would come to maturation and then would come to seeding and flowering and even the complete fruition. So whenever we have class, I really encourage all of you to listen to the classes whenever you can, to attend as many classes as you can. If you have those opportunities to attend those classes in person, that's good. However, if you don't have such opportunities, you can still listen to the audios and videos and reading. You can still receive the Dharma teachings. And whenever you receive those teachings with great sense of respect and with a great sense of revere to the Dharma, then you can also receive the teachings that would bring a certain benefit to your mind. Just as there are people who didn't really listen to a lot of Dharma teachings before, and then their minds were very much stubborn and very difficult to tame. However, after receiving lots of teachings, their mind becomes more malleable and more tamed. The next verse says that the sound of the drum in the city of the celestial beings acts as the cause yielding the gift of undauntedness and granting them victory. Previously, we've already studied that the celestial drum would make the sound of giving the teachings of the Four Noble Truths, as well as making the sound that would encourage people, the celestial beings especially, so that they can be fearless. In such a way, they can overcome the host of the Asuras. Especially the Asuras, once driven to the battlefield to battle with the celestial beings, they were driven by the aggressions. But after the celestial beings listening to the sound of the drum and then fight against of the Asuras, the sound would dispel the gods, the celestial beings, revealing in such play. With the sound of Four Noble Truths, the distractions of the sentient beings and all kinds of blazing afflictions can be pacified. And then sentient beings would be able to receive all kinds of benefits. So, the celestial drum is very much like the teachings of the Buddha. Over here it says that likewise arising from the world, from the cause of meditative stability, from such samadhi, formless dimensions, and so on, it expresses the mode of unsurpassable path which will fully overcome by all afflictions and suffering, and thus lead all sentient beings to peace. All kinds of samadhis and the formless samadhis and all kinds of virtuous deeds would be upheld by such kind of power of meditative absorption, which then would be able to destroy all kinds of afflictions and the suffering of the sentient beings, as well as the fear of the sentient beings. In the celestial realm, there are not many great opportunities to engage in practice. However, the celestial drum would be able to provide a good opportunity to remind the celestial beings to engage in Dharma practice. The teaching of the Buddha would remind the sentient beings to practice in the correct Dharma by giving the teachings of, for example, selflessness and on the truth of suffering and so on. All of our Dharma practitioners engaging in various classes, in preliminary practices class, or the Pure Land practice class, and so on and so forth, or the 5 treatises and so on. I think it would be the best for you to engage in actual practice, actual meditations. Because if you were to only study but not engage in any practice, then genuine insights won't arise in your mind. At the end of your life, it would not bring you much of the intrinsic benefit. Therefore, after seeing the futility of life, we should engage in diligent studies and practice as well. Samsara is futile. The waves of the ocean of samsara would crush the sentient beings at any time because of impermanence. So we should try to eliminate as much as the distractions as possible. But people nowadays would practice all kinds of distractions and squandering their life. Of course, if you are already sure that you'll be liberated at the time of death, then of course you can play with your gadgets as long as you want. However, not many people have such kind of certainty. People nowadays squander their time through various kinds of gossiping and infuse their minds with the 5 kinds of poisons, anger, aggression, jealousy, and so on. But for genuine practitioners, none of those would trap their attention. They would only keep their eyes on liberation. If you can keep your eyes on the final liberation, then you won't get distracted by all of those meaningless and frivolous matters at all. I've asked all of you to engage in retreat at least a few days a year. We should take the time to engage in annual retreats. There are retreats that some of the practitioners would engage in 300 days retreat per year. But of course, such kind of retreat should be conducted by practitioners whom studied or with certain foundations of study. For example, at least you have to finish the completion of the courses of the 3 treatises minimum. Later on, we will provide opportunities for practitioners to engage in retreats. There are practitioners who want to engage in retreat for 100, 200, or 300 days. Each year, we have practitioners recommended by Khenpo and Khenmos to engage in 300 days of retreat. There are people without much foundation, but they want to engage in actual retreat. However, their mind is not very much focused. They will be distracted inside the house. Then only the house is in retreat, but you, the practitioner, is not in retreat. Or maybe even the mice in your house are in retreat, but you're not. So it is quite important and to make sure that you're not distracted and your mind is very much in sync with the Dharma. And then with such kind of foundation as foundations of the study, and then with the mind of attaining renunciation and liberation, then you can engage in retreat. So Khenpos and Khemos, I think it's quite important for you to encourage your students to stop all kinds of distractions, such as no gossiping and no frivolous speech and so on and so forth. Not saying that you have to practice that to an extreme that you stop talking altogether, even the functional talkings. Speech is really the source of all kinds of frivolous speech is really the source of all kinds of negative karma. Khenpos and Khemos, I think in the Tibetan practitioners sector, they've already collected all the cell phones. They asked all the practitioners to hand in their cell phones throughout the majority time of the week. They only can use it for once or twice a week. Majority of practitioners, of course, they've already renounced from the world, from the worldly life. And then that's why they came to this place in this valley. Otherwise, if you were to come here and then engaging in all the 8 worldly dharmas, what's the point of you staying here at all? So I really hope that the Khenpos and Khemos could be leading the practitioners to practice the genuine Dharma. I'm sure you're very good at giving teachings, but how well are you in terms of your practice of taming your mind? Only you will know that. On the other hand, though I consider that I don't have high realizations or anything like that, maybe my realization of practice can be the worst of all compared to all of you. But I have never stopped trying to familiarize myself with the Dharma. If you have such an intention, then wherever you are, it could be in the cities, it could be over here, it could be in the hotel. That's how I am now. I feel that I can stay anywhere, really. But in the past, it wasn't like that at all. And I can see such kind of change in myself, though very small, but are all generated from the familiarization from the Dharma. Whenever you're facing all kinds of people giving you praises or slanders and all kinds of comments and so on and so forth. Mipa Rinpoche once said that at a certain stage, a practitioner would be able to receive all kinds of words from the others, all kinds of comments from the others. Let it be of slandering, let it be of criticism, let it be of praise. People tend to only like to be praised but can't receive any criticism. But nowadays, I think if you can familiarize yourself with the Dharma, then none of those comments would create any happiness or suffering in your mind stream. I myself at least feel that way. Maybe because of my age too, I'm getting quite numbed from the others' comments. comments, and no longer care about them as much. Just as Confucius said that at this age you will know yourself and no longer be bind to the others or others' opinions. After hearing the sound of the Dharma teaching from the Buddha, it has the function of such. And now let's look at how the examples of the celestial drum is not up to par to that of the teachings of the Buddha. So over here it says that compared to the celestial drum, the Buddha's voice, the Buddha's teaching is far superior. Why is that? It is because, first of all, it is universal, or it is all-pervasive. It is impartial also. It is not partial also, rather it's impartial. The sound of the teaching of the Buddha would definitely bring benefits and fruition to the sentient beings. The Buddha's teachings would benefit the sentient beings in the way that it could lead sentient beings to gain a better rebirth, a more beneficial rebirth, as well as the definitive victory, that is liberation. Also, the sound of the teaching of the Buddha is endowed with the threefold miracles. The threefold miracles over here refers to the displaying miraculous powers and displaying all pervasive expressions and displaying the miraculous effects of teaching the Dharma. So the first one is displaying miraculous powers, where it corresponds with the body of the Buddha. And then the second one is displaying all pervasive expression. The Buddha relying on the non-dual wisdom, he would be able to illuminate the mind of the sentient beings, to dispel the darkness of the sentient beings. To give the sentient beings teaching so that their minds would be illuminated. This is in terms of speech. And then the third one is displaying the miraculous effects of teaching the Dharma. Over here it talks about all kinds of examples, similes, and all kinds of teachings expounded so that it could lead the sentient beings to emancipation. The three miraculous threefold of miraculous powers, translated by Huang Baosheng, another translator, is a little bit different. It seems that this part is supposed to be a brief explanation, but it seems that it's already expounding it in detail, especially about the threefold miracles.
不得到处理的这个天人的这种脑部声啊等等，就是这些，因为天人的这些的话呢，
The celestial beings,
只能天人有比个别的听到，就是所以
celestial drums sound can be heard only by a certain group of celestial beings. It can only bring certain partial benefits to the celestial beings. So compared to the speech that of the Buddha, in fact, there is still a large gap. The Buddha's speech is still far superior than that of the celestial drum. Whenever we hear certain speeches given by some worldly teachers or certain presentations and so on, some of them do sound very good. However, in terms of how their speech and their teachings can give you the benefit. In fact, they cannot compare to that of the Buddhas, which can bring you ultimate benefit. There's so many different kinds of speeches and presentations given, and you have access to them. But can they really bring you such benefit? There are different religions that talks about all kinds of virtuous deeds and so on and so forth. But how many of them would give the teachings on selflessness? How many of them would give the teachings on dependent origination? I think as Buddhists, though we should recognize there are some valuable teachings out there, but what's more important and what's the most superior is still the Buddha's teachings. That is of the great profundity when it comes to the truth.
暂时就是处理就是他们的这种散乱，就是真正的这个有深度的呢，就很难就是像我们这个人世间的就是这样的这种这个法，就是这个是很难讲。
So the celestial drum cannot compare to the quality of the Buddhas because it is only temporary and it only brings benefit to a partial group of celestial beings and not all pervasive. However, the Buddha's teachings are all pervasive through the threefold miracles. And then the second outline talks about each of the differences accordingly. Over here, it talks about how the celestial drum can be only heard in certain realms of the celestial realm, or in certain levels of the celestial realm, or in certain different celestial realms. If the sound can be heard in this celestial realm, maybe cannot be heard in the other celestial realm. However, when the teaching of the Buddha is expounded, then all the sentient beings, let it be the ones that lives above the ground or under the ground or anywhere, they can all receive the teachings of the Buddha. We heard of the story of how Mahayana once listening to the teaching given by the Buddha, and he started to think that how far could the Buddha's sound extend, and then he used his miraculous power and started to investigate on the extent of the Buddha's sound. He went to the Mount Sumaru and all the 4 continents, and then after crossing 99 rivers and 99 Sumaru mountains, he went to this particular Pure Land that is the Pure Land of the King of Luminosity, Tathagata, and then he still hears the sound of Shakyamuni Buddha. He hears that the sound is neither decreased nor increased. Everywhere is of great equanimity. And then the Tathagata said that this is a miraculous power of the Buddha and the quality of the Tathagata that cannot be measured, and such sound is all pervasive and there is no extent to such sound. The sound of the Buddha compared to the sound of the celestial drum, in fact, there are still lots of difference. And then the second one over here says that millions of divine sibyls resound among the gods, the celestial beings, to set fire of lust ablaze and to fan its flames. The single melody of those of compassionate beings manifests to fully quench all the fires of suffering. So let it be sibyls or any other instruments or the celestial drum, in fact.
但是也有一部分的话呢，就是它可能增长呢。
The sibyls over here refers to all kinds of musical instruments. They were there, played in the celestial realm to increase the kinds of distractions in the celestial realm, to fan the flames of the fire of lust. Look at the sentient beings like us. We watch all kinds of TV shows and listen to all kinds of music, which then further increase our desire. The music that you play as a music offering that you play at the beginning of the class, it would be the best to play some very happy and uplifting music rather than some really sad and really sorrow music. I think lots of the music tend to be quite feminine, maybe because the different dispositions and different likings. When Ponso Rinpoche was still with us, lots of the music that's played when welcoming him or when during a chanting and so on, all kinds of musics would be played. But in general, I don't want to meddle with your choices, but in general, I hope that you don't choose anything that's that's full of sorrow. Rather, try to find something that's more uplifting. During the play of the biography of the Buddha, there are the actors whom would act in certain scenes, such as there are the ones with the Mara appearing. Then the background sound, the music score would actually change to something that is of sorrow or of fear. I believe the worldly music, other than some very unique cases, the majority of them are the ones to praise various kinds of emotions, or that's generated from emotions, or fan the fire of emotions, even including in Africa, in various continents all throughout this world. That's the function of music. The music over here that's played by the sibyls, by the celestial drums, though the sound is to promote the Four Noble Truths, the teachings. However, the music is to increase the fire of desire. However, the compassionate sound of the Buddha, in fact, is to extinguish the fire. According to the Vaipoya Adornment Sutra, it says that if one were to hear the Buddha, the sound is of great subtle and of great profundity. The sound of the Buddha's teaching can swiftly eradicate the afflictions, and it could put to an end of the aggregates that leads to suffering. Therefore, whenever we can listen to the teachings of the Dharma, the sound of the Buddha, then slowly and slowly the afflictions and sufferings would definitely decrease and be eradicated from our mind stream. Yes, there are times that you're very much infused by your karmic retribution, and it's very difficult to change. However, to listen to the sound of the Dharma would definitely be able to help you in the long run and in the times that your karmic retribution is not completely coming to maturation yet. The next verse, it says that all the wonderful sounds and beautiful sounds that made by the sibyls and by the celestial drums would cause among the celestial beings to increase of their distractions, whereas the speech of the compassionate Tathagata exhorts to reflect and commits the mind to samadhi. Whenever we hear the various kinds of sounds, even the celestial drums, they are of great distractions. But the sound of the Buddha is to eradicate such kind of distractions. However, because we have lots of the karmic retribution and karmic tendencies really to grasp onto those distractions of the music. Whenever, even during our listening of the Dharma, all of a sudden if you hear some popular music that generated from your computer or your screen whatsoever, right away your mind is drawn to that, get distracted. Especially for people with a heavier tendency of such kind of karmic retribution, and then karmic disposition, and then they would get easily to be distracted by such music. At first, it could be something small that you just wanted to take a break, but you would grasp onto it for a longer period of time and then holding onto it. So over here it says that the sound of the celestial drum becomes the cause that would lead to the distraction. But the sound of the Buddha would give the teachings on the Four Noble Truth, on the truth of suffering, on the truth of selflessness, and the truth of nirvana is peace, which would lead to the final liberation of the sentient beings, and would alleviate the sentient beings from suffering, even on a temporary aspect or in a short term. Of course, that is very much based on the sentient beings' different retribution and different collections or levels of accumulation of virtue. You have to have lots of virtue to be able to receive them as well. And now the fourth aspect, it talks about any cause of happiness for earthly beings and celestial beings in whichever sphere of the world, without exception. Briefly spoken, fully depends upon this melody that pervades all the worlds, not forsaking one. The Chinese translation needs to make a few of the changes over here, so let's take a look at it. A few of the sibyls or the celestial drum, whatever, a celestial drum and whatever instruments, in fact, it cannot eradicates the sufferings of the worldly beings and the celestial beings. They're not the cause of eradicating suffering. They're not the cause of increasing or contribute to the causes of undefiled bliss. However, the Buddha with the threefold miracles that corresponds to the body, speech, and mind are all pervasive and would be able to eliminate the whole world without exception. in such a way, the Buddha's speech would be able to lead the sentient beings to renounce from suffering and surpass the fetters and finally lead to emancipation. Let it be in a relative or the ultimate sense, the Buddha's speech would lead the sentient beings to liberation, according to the adornment of Sutra Shastra, where it says that the Buddha's speech to that of the celestial realm, and the Buddha's speech would be able to lead the sentient beings to be reborn in celestial realm and ultimately to the path of liberation and to the destination of liberation. Such kind of speech is of great certainty, and there is nothing faulty within. Whenever we hear the teachings of the Buddha, sometimes we feel that certain teachings are not of the most ultimate. However, the teachings were given to specific beings, and the teaching of the Buddha at that time was very much useful to that particular being. Therefore, to this kind of teachings that is not the absolute, we call them as the teachings that is relative. However, they're so beneficial. There is no mistake in the Buddha's teaching at all, in the Buddha's speech. When it comes to the teachings of the Buddha, we have to analyze and we have to use our wisdom to look at the teachings. However, at the same time, we shouldn't come to conclusions of the Buddha's teachings based on our dualistic mind. There are the teachings given by the Buddha for reasons to benefit a certain group of beings, and there are the teachings given by the Buddha to lead the sentient beings to ultimate liberation. There are different ways of explaining the Buddhist teachings. We don't have to distort the teaching of the Buddha. We have to look at the teachings given by the Buddha as it is. Of course, if you find anything that is wrong, that is inappropriate, spoken by the Buddha or spoken by a teacher, then you can have a debate or you can have a certain conversation about it. However, after deep analysis through your wisdom, you would come to the conclusion that the Buddha's teaching is indeed superior and surpass that of the other religions and of the other philosophies as well. And then over here, as where the power of the speech does not enter and where it is unhindered, it says that just like for people without the ability of hearing, one cannot experience the subtle sound, such one cannot experience the subtle sound. So people without faith, they won't be able to receive the teaching of the Buddha, just like people without the ability of hearing, the capacity of hearing. That's the one aspect. So people without the capacity of hearing, then they can't hear the subtle sound. And then the second aspect of it talks about the ears of the celestial beings cannot hear the sound of the celestial drum. Certain group of the celestial beings won't be able to hear the sound made by the celestial drum because celestial drum only has the very limited capacity. Likewise, as the field of experience of the very finest primordial wisdom, the subtle Dharma only reaches the ear of someone whose mind is rid of poison. Such kind of Dharma that is undefiled, that is luminous, that is devoid of deliberation and elaboration. Such kind of Dharma can only be received by the ones with great wisdom and with the capacity. Also, the ones without distraction, the ones without affliction, the ones with auspicious connections. This is the quality of the Dharma. According to 400 verses of Madhyamika, where it says that the ones with right mindfulness with straightforwardness, then this kind of beings are considered as the appropriate ways to receive the Dharma. Look at the beings that's defiled with all kinds of afflictions and with all kinds of distractions, then it's very difficult for them to receive the Dharma. The Dharma is so profound and subtle. Only the ones with the great wisdom can receive the teaching and delve into the great profundity of the Dharma. On the other hand, the sentient beings have to make good connection to the Dharma. With auspicious connections, then they would be able to receive the teaching and take it into their heart. According to the sutra expounded by the noble one who protects the country, it says that for numerous numbers of kalpas, it is difficult to encounter the Buddha. It is difficult to receive the teaching of the correct Dharma. Such kind of difficult incidences that have already been encountered by all of us, then if such person were to encounter the Buddha, to encounter the correct Dharma that's difficult to encounter, then this person would definitely be able to attain the Bodhi, the fruition. There are beings, there are people, the practitioners, only stay for a very short period of time in a center or within certain sanghas, and then they would be able to alleviate lots of their sufferings and afflictions. They would generate great merit, and then would be able to take the Dharma to their heart. Not only they've changed and tamed their own mind, they would be able to use the Dharma to change and tame the other beings, to influence the other beings. I've noticed many great masters, the great masters coming from the various schools, the Theravada, the schools from the various traditions, the Chinese tradition, the Tibetan tradition, and so on and so forth. In fact, they would be able to benefit the sentient beings. Milarepa also stated in such a way. Of course, Milarepa expounded much better than how I expounded, in a much more beautiful and poetic way. There is no master to the Dharma. It is only that whomsoever has the capacity to receive it, the diligence to receive it, then they would be the master of the Dharma. People with faith, they would be able to receive certain Dharma, certain amount of Dharma. People with diligence, they would be able to receive certain aspect of the Dharma. So whomsoever have the kind of ability, the kind of connections, and the kind of virtue, then you're free to take the Dharma, because there is no master of the Dharma. You can take whatever you need and whatever you wish for. Previously, those are the examples of the celestial drama. Next talks about the cloud, or using cloud as example. The first one, in terms of the outline, it talks about how the cloud referred to the wisdom is all-pervasive, and firstly, it talks about how the clouds would be conducive in the growth of the crops. And then in terms of this one, the next one talks about how it is not deliberate. Let's look at how it is not deliberate. Just like the monsoon clouds in summertime continuously and without any effort pour down their vast masses of water, causing on earth the best possible crops. Just so, the cloud of compassion, the rain of victors, pure teaching pours down its waters without ideation, causing a harvest of virtues for beings. In summertime, the monsoon clouds would permeate all throughout the sky, just like how recently we've been having lots of rains in Tibet. And we see this kind of monsoon clouds that would bestow great rains and would be beneficial for the growth of the crops. Such kind of raining from the great clouds are without effort. It is not that the clouds have this deliberate thinking, wishing to grow the crops. It just happens spontaneously. Out of the merit of the farmers and all kinds of conditions and so on and so forth, the rain would be able to fall down onto the crops so that the crops would grow prosperously and naturally. In terms of its meaning, the great compassionate Buddha bestowed the Dharma teaching of the Four Noble Truths, as well as the great rain of the 84,000 types of Dharma teachings. Similarly, the Buddha's great rain of Dharma would be conducive to the crops of the sentient beings' mind stream. But does the Buddha or Bodhisattvas have any dualistic thoughts, wanting to benefit only certain group or the others? In fact, there is no such kind of deliberate effort at all. However, there must be the accumulation of conditions. Without such kind of conditions, then the sentient beings won't be able to receive the teachings of the Buddha, of the Dharma. When I went to Africa, I felt that how sad that the various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are not here to benefit sentient beings in this continent, not even the great Dharma teachers. In fact, it is not that they're not there. It is because of the sentient beings do not have such kind of connections. So without such connections and without that kind of virtuous deeds accumulated by the sentient beings, it is difficult for them to hear the teachings, even to encounter the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas even. The next verse, where it says that just as the wind-borne clouds cause rain to fall, when the worldly beings follow the path of virtue from the Buddha cloud called by compassion's wind, pure Dharma rains by rains to nurture the virtue of beings.
不防疫啊、持戒啊、布施啊，这样的话呢，就是实际上是依靠这种这个
The sentient beings,
这个风调雨顺嘛，就是依靠这个
once accumulating various kinds of virtue, such as the 6 paramitas and the 10 virtuous actions and so on, that would be conducive to the power of the celestial beings, so that the celestial beings would naturally then gather great rain clouds and would be bestowing the rain that would be beneficial to the clouds. The scientists won't agree that the rains and whatever weather is caused by celestial being, caused by their power. However, it is really the kind of natural law that based on the virtue of the sentient beings in this world, such kind of cloud would gather and then bestow the rain. Similarly, because of the sentient beings' connections and their faith as well as diligence, then the Buddhas, out of the wind of the Buddha's great compassion, which would stir the clouds and then bestow the rain of Dharma that would benefit the sentient beings. The Buddha, out of his great compassion, he won't abide in the extreme of nirvana, and out of his great wisdom, he won't abide in the extreme of the three existences either. So, through the great knowledge, the great wisdom, and the compassion with regard to existence, it abides in the midst of space, unsullied by change and non-change, holding the essence of unpolluted waters of Dharani and Samadhi. The cloud of the Muni, that is the Buddha, is the cause of harvest of virtue. So out of the great compassion, the Buddha would tame the sentient beings that is infinite to number. Also, out of such great compassion, the Buddha would not abide in the kind of extinction like that of the Arhats or Pratika Buddhas. Rather, the great Buddha would benefit sentient beings through the undefiled Samadhi and Dharani, with such kind of great oceans of immeasurable ways of benefiting the sentient beings. The Buddha then is considered as the great all-pervasive cloud that could be conducive to the virtues of the sentient beings' virtuous roots. That is similar to that of the crops in this world. I believe after studying Uttaratantra Shastra this time, you would generate a much deeper and more profound and more heartfelt insights about who the Buddha is and about the various qualities of the Buddha. People who never studied the teachings of the Buddha nor engaged in various schools, they would feel that Buddha is someone who is of great form. There was someone who asked me, is Buddhism of atheism or of theistic or atheistic? I said Buddhism is not theistic. So when it comes to whether Buddhism is materialistic or not, or is it fully based on your mind, in fact, we can't abide onto either of the extremes. If you were to study the Madhyamika teachings, you would be able to understand. We shouldn't say that the sentient beings in an inanimate world, none of them would exist, nor should we state that they all exist. But of course, we have to come to such kind of conclusion through analysis. If we were to comply with that of the statement from the West saying that there are gods and there is a creator, in fact, that is not necessarily the ultimate conclusion. In the West and in certain parts of the East, in some of the traditional culture, in fact, there are the recognition of spirits, of ghosts, of the soul, so to speak. But that kind of teaching is still not the ultimate view, is still not the ultimate understanding. And if you were to say that there's a creator that is stated in the Western religion, that is not the ultimate either. How about the mind, you may ask? Well, does the mind, existence of the mind as the ultimate conclusion? In fact, through the analysis, we would be able to see that there is no existence of the mind, but we can't even say that there is the existence or not if you engage in detailed analysis of understanding each aspect of the teaching. So who is the Buddha? In the relative aspect, we can say that the Buddha was a person, was a prince who then renounced his palace life and then attained full realization throughout history. He was an actual person in the relative, in the conventional sense. But in the ultimate sense, we should be able to understand the Buddha through the teaching of Uttaratantra Shastra. We should engage in detailed explanation. There is a class tomorrow, no class day after. Remember that?